Good morning, Gamecocks. Today is Friday, April 18th, the year of our Lord 2025, spring football game day. And this is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Certainly thrilled to death that you've decided to listen, watch, whatever you do this morning. It's an honor and a privilege always. I think there are very few days that something awesome's going on in Columbia that I don't kind of wish I was there. It's tough. Today's definitely one of those days. uh was scheduled to go. Life happens. It comes up. I'm not as free to travel as I once was before I got married, and it's just one of those things that we weren't able to make it. We were planning on it, planning on heading down Wednesday and staying for a week or so, but it just didn't work out. So you guys go and have fun for me. Those of you that are heading to Williams-Brice Stadium tonight. Some good news, a sliver of good news yesterday with regards to baseball. Brandon Stone pitches a complete game. I didn't see a complete game coming from a pitcher, but that's good because you have all your pitchers left for games 2 and 3 of this series, and the Gamecocks defeat Ole Miss. They get just enough run support. 3-2. Two of the balls for Ole Miss flew out of the yard. That's kind of what they do, is hit home runs. There's a lot of teams in the SEC that do that. A lot of teams that hit home runs against Carolina this year, but they survived it. They won 3-2. A win is a win. I think that in baseball, you do win a certain percentage of games. Chicago White Sox were terrible last year and won 41 times. They're equally terrible this year. Kind of crazy, the outlook on the White Sox this year. And this is why sometimes it's hard for me to get into pro baseball. Like, I think, what would it be like to be a Pittsburgh Pirates fan? Um, and if they don't do something about college sports, as far as anybody can spend anything, you're going to have situations, of course, like the Tampa Bay Rays, who don't make a couple. If they make a couple of nickels, I would be surprised. But they win because they're a good franchise. But you're also going to have situations like the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh Pirates have been around since the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, at least the early 1900s. They were one of the legacy franchises in baseball, and they never have a chance. They have Paul Skeens, good story. Well, when his contract's up and he signs with the Dodgers or Yankees, you're basically like another level of a farm system, farm team. How do you win? How do you give your fans hope? And that's what's coming for certain schools that you know can't spend it. Carolina, I think, is set up pretty well for everything. But there's other schools out there that have great traditions in college football and basketball that win that over time may not win anymore if you set it up like Major League Baseball. But the White Sox outlook this year was, well, maybe they'll be improved enough to lose only 100 games this year. Imagine having that as your outlook. That's Major League Baseball wonders sometimes why the sport has declined in popularity and why ESPN doesn't want to televise it anymore. It's because nobody's got a shot. I mean, even in the NBA, the Denver Nuggets won the title a couple of years ago. I mean, you don't NFL set up for parity, not baseball, boy. Anyway, the point is, in baseball, you win a game sometimes, but it's really not about one game. It's about kind of what you do with it. Can you get hot? It's like in Major League, the movie. That's called a winning streak. So, hey, get on a winning streak, and I think people will settle down about the whole thing. I'm remain very concerned about the program. Team job program. I'm concerned about the program. I'm long term, whatever right now, but this team obviously they haven't. I feel like I'm repeating myself, like it's basketball season. Haven't thrown in the towel. Got to win, but one win is certainly welcomed. It's better than the alternative, but it's what you do with it. First pitch this afternoon, 4 o'clock. This enables fans in Columbia to go to both the baseball game and the spring game. Kickoff is at 7:30 for the spring football game. Softball not in action. They have a Saturday through Monday series against Kentucky this weekend, so they play tomorrow. I want to mention this. It's kind of out of the wheelhouse for coffee, and really for I think the morning shows. The equestrian team. Now check this out. South Carolina hired an I guess Equestrian was floundering a little bit. You know, they've won national championships in Equestrian. It's been a proud program, kind of unique to South Carolina. I don't think Clemson doesn't have Equestrian and some other things. Yesterday they upset TCU, and Phil made the point on the show yesterday that anytime you beat a school from Texas and Equestrian, where there's a lot of horses, I guess rodeos, cowboys. I don't know. I would guess Texas schools are good at that. I would think Kentucky schools, if they had equestrian, would be good at that. But come on. Maybe I'm being facetious, but it was a good thing. It was an upset, and so they beat TCU, and now they move on to play top-ranked SMU, and they play the Gamecocks, who are the seventh seed. Now, equestrian coach Carol Gwynn came from SMU. She was a former Gamecock assistant. So she's coming back. But check this out, man. This was like I don't know because there was a flurry of hires. There was Ashley Chastain Woodard. There's a new golf coach who's doing a good job for men's golf. There was obviously the Paul Maneri baseball search took a lot of oxygen out of the room. I guess it got lost on me. I'm sorry to all of you out there. She was at SMU 10 years, won back-to-back national titles. I mean, this was a hell of a hire, taking them for her from SMU, where she built a monster in equestrian, and now she's facing her former team on the national stage. So go Gamecock Equestrian. Yeah, that's I don't know how. I mean, I should have talked to Whittle about it. I don't. It's hard enough to keep up with the primary sports to be able to talk about it every day, write about it, that kind of thing. So I guess it got lost on me. But for all intents and purposes, that was a heck of a hire. I mean, if you hired a coach in a more major sport that had won two straight national championships and fresh off that they come to South Carolina, I mean, I think that would be. I mean, it's the equivalent of hiring Kirby Smart from Georgia after 2021 and 2022 in football, or Dan Hurley for to coach the basketball team. I mean, that's big. I guess it got lost on me, but she has her new program facing her old program, and that gets started this morning around 9. I don't know where you can catch. I think it's stream. They stream it somewhere, maybe SEC Network Plus. So check that out. I know nothing about equestrian, but certainly always room in the trophy case for any sport at the University of South Carolina, right? But back to the spring football game. Visitors coming in today. We'll go over that. Hill McGranahan is on the morning show this morning to break all that down. Phil and I will be on with a sort of a tailgate show kind of deal. We do the tailgate show to preview the spring game. Only 1 hour on the show today. Phil heading to Columbia, so he's got to get in the car and get on down. And so we have a lot to talk about and preview on all of our shows here on Chief Sports South Carolina Today, the live shows and this one. But yesterday I went through the offense as we kind of wrap up spring, went position by position. A wide receiver was a spot that I can, emphatically say has answered some questions, probably the most questions this spring. It's not a surprise when you headed it, you're going into spring. What you wanted to see was improvement by the returning four, the big four, so to speak, and they have. And then you wanted to see the young guys come on, and you want, when you look at it overall, if you have your four and they've improved and they did play last year and they're all good, there's just part of their capable. There's just part of their games that needed to improve, and there were different things for different ones. What Nick Harbor needs to work on is different than what Mazio Bennett needed to work on. That's different than what Jared Brown needed to work on, and then Vandrevius Jacobs. And so if you got that, and you're just hoping that two, maybe three of the newcomers can get in the rotation, and you play 5 to 7 a game. I think that it's sometimes beneficial to not play a ton of receivers because they can't get into a rhythm if they're coming in and out, in and out, in and out. But you do sub there because you've got receivers. You expend a lot of energy every play, especially if you're passing the ball a lot. Regardless if you get the ball or not, you're running routes, running game, you're blocking. I mean, it's a position where you do sub, but I almost think sometimes, it, you know, 5 to 7, 6 to 8 is the ideal number. Just so everybody remains on the same page. That also kind of throws your quarterback off if a guy he's got great chemistry with isn't on the field. You dial up a play. Oh, I'm used to throwing it to number 3. Well, instead of number 11's in there, so we're gonna. I mean, you know the drill. So, and then there's injuries you have to account for. This room last year was not did not escape the injury bug, unfortunately. But I feel confident in saying that. I think every spot has made strides, and that's what you want for spring. Is just you got to put a team together these days. You got 30 something new players. Uh, you, you know, get them together, gel them, all that stuff, and a lot of that gelling also happens during the summer months. With off-season workouts with Coach Day and his staff and everything else. So you're looking for consistent improvement. So the defense, there's not a spot on the defense that's not missing somebody that was key last year. Some more than others. D line, Dylan Stewart's the guy, the starter you have back. Linebacker, you lost both starters, all three guys that rotated. In the secondary, you lost a Donald Fortune at corner, and you lost Nick Emanware at safety. So this defense is a new defense, new players. There's some holdover to build around guys like Jelon Kilgore and DQ Smith, and of course Dylan Stewart. There's guys that played in backup roles last year, like Monkel Goodwine, and Nick Barrett, who will be counted on to do more. Nick Barrett, by the way, had a really good spring as well. I always thought he was capable. Had some injuries, some conditioning stuff, but Clayton White's mentioned him a couple of times. Also, based on feedback, he's doing well too. So we've gotten good feedback on Goodwine, Brownlow Dindy, now Nick Barrett. So there's 3 D tackles that have been doing well in practice at least, right? And then Xavion Hardy's situation. So but yeah, there's guys that have played, like Fred Johnson was a backup last year that have been on the team, they just haven't started. So you look at the start, if you look at the starters, it's all just about all new starters. Uh, so let's start with the D line. I think obviously losing Jalen Brown was bad. Not that he can't be replaced, but that's a guy that, they don't have a lot of guys like that have that position versatility that can slide inside, play outside. I was told before he got hurt, he was an athletic upgrade over Kyle Kennard, not necessarily a upgrade as a player right now. I guess the direct quote was, I don't know that he'll get 11 and a half sacks, but just athletically, he's faster and bigger and all that good stuff. So they had some high hopes for the redshirt freshman transfer from Missouri, and it just doesn't look. I hate to. Again, I don't know for sure. It's up in the air, but it doesn't look promising for him to make it back. And if he does, he's behind. So, got to find another answer there. Brian Thomas Jr. At that other edge spot is the leader in the clubhouse to start, 6'2", 254. Brian Thomas Jr.'s gotten better every year he's been here. He's had a good spring. A player that they really like. They're really high on him. So we'll see if that happens. At the backup spots, obviously, why do I have trouble saying his name? Jatus? Julo. JT. JT Gear and Desmond Umazulu. I can pronounce Umazulu. Can't pronounce Jasius. Anyway, those two guys, one's from Syracuse, kind of been hurt, injured, not healthy. The other's developmental guy, although he was a big recruiting win, 4-star guy. It's time for those guys to step up and be an impactful part of the rotation. They played last year. Desmond had over 100 snaps. I think Gear was right at like 96. I don't have it in front of me, but they played. But you got to have those guys really be something because Dylan Stewart can't play every play. Brian Thomas Jr. can't play every play. You need backups. Damon Clowney is in. I don't know that he probably won't be there for the spring game tonight. If he does, he'll just kind of be there. But he's another reserve guy. You got the two freshmen. This spot, and I know there's a lot of chatter about Bo Atkinson, the transfer from North Carolina. The Gamecocks did talk with him yesterday. If you can get him, that would be one. I'm usually one on the side of, well, you're going to win some and lose some. What's important is what you actually have and not what you've lost. He's one though that I don't think is overvalued in the portal. I mean, there's always for anybody that's not like Dylan Stewart or Lenore Sellers level, there's always too much. And I don't know what people are going to pay him. I don't even know that it's necessarily all about money. He left North Carolina, and that was a big surprise to a lot of folks up there. He's from Raleigh. Bill Belichick's up there. I mean, I don't know whether it was the scheme or what, but if you can get a guy like that or him, and I don't know either way, that's gonna really that's a guy that's not that's a plug and play. That's just a guy that not gonna bust. Gonna get there. Gonna do. He's just a proven player. Um, so we'll see what happens. Who knows if things will develop there, but they are kind of looking at another edge. Obviously, D tackle, and there's another North Carolina guy, Joel Starlings, that 4-star guy out of high school that they recruited heavily. Hadn't done much at UNC. Had some better players behind him, but again, you're looking at numbers there. Looking at numbers, and then of course a kicker in the portal. But so that's D end, D tackle. I've mentioned 3 guys already. You've got good practice reports over. A fourth, Xavion Hardy. You know the drill there. It's just a matter of catching up with the conditioning and the program and the nutrition, and then learning how to the techniques at this level, which Travian Robertson's really good at teaching. So like if he'd have come in from say Georgia, and you got to catch him up on all of this and all of that, then you're like, well, what do we really get here? But because he was in a junior college, and in today's day and age with the transfer portal, you get different types of transfers. This has been how it is with JUCOs for a long time. That's why half of them do well their first year, half of them don't, maybe less than half, because it's they're not in a program like you have. The other players you have in your program are further along because they've had the resources to be further along, quite frankly. But based on what you saw last offseason with guys making tremendous physical, Dylan Stewart's an example of that. They didn't have all the resources, so to speak, at Friendship Collegiate Academy in Washington, D.C. But he gets in the program, and go look at the before and after pictures. And that's the kind of thing with Hardy that's the key. You've also got Devontae Miles, which they talked about having some position versatility. He's put on some weight a little bit. He's there. Heard a lot of good things early on after workouts. Hadn't heard much since, but that's not, you don't hear about every single player on the roster. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. And then Rondo Porter. So there's 6. You probably, Christian Ingram's coming in, and then Caleb Williams is hurt, the freshman. So that's 8. You probably like a couple more, one more, I think there. Because you want to rotate them. You want 6 guys that are good enough to not hurt you when you go in. You do what's called stealing snaps. You know, you steal snap here, snap there. You don't want to put a guy in a game, and then all of a sudden the other team checks to an ISO play right to that guy's side. He gets blown off the ball. They get your linebackers, and boom, there you go. So I think D tackle's coming along nicely. Edge, I'll just be frank. I've been kicking this around for a while. I think collectively, because Dylan Stewart matters a whole lot, and Brian Thomas Jr. is an excellent pass rusher. You know, a little worried about setting the edge out there with him. I think collectively, I am less concerned about D tackle than I am about edge at this point. And I know they replace more players at the numbers wise at tackle. I just kind of see it coming together as a rotation, but at edge, man, right now, because Devon Clowney, I think they can make him into a good rotational guy. I think he's got the tools, but he's never done it. You know, so there's a long track record there of, you know, you're gonna have to coach up. Kyle Kennard wasn't all that productive before he got to Carolina either. But is Kyle Kennard the exception or the rule? That's the question. You know, is that and you don't know. I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, well, they got lucky and it was just him. Because I don't think luck has anything to do with what Kyle Kennard did last year. I think it's a lot of work, specifically by Kyle himself. I mean, that dude's a worker, baller, you know. Uh, so that's you know, I don't think it's fair to say that, but I also don't think that you can necessarily just say, well, this is going to happen all the time. South Carolina's going to make a living at different positions on getting guys that were not all that productive at their previous stop and turning them into good players. We don't have enough data to say that. I mean, I kind of, you kind of look at the direction it's pointing and the number of players that, you know, kind of were not doing much at their old school that got to this school and ended up playing well, especially from the higher levels. You know, a lot of the guys they've gotten from the higher levels, Goodwine's an example of that, you know, weren't playing all that much. They get to Carolina, they play well, you know, and it's all, you know, specifically on the D line. So you're hopeful there. But I mean, you know, a guy like Demetrius Knight, now he did, once he found a home at linebacker at Charlotte, he was all conference. But he languished at Georgia Tech for 3 or 4 years as a special teams player and like the fourth string quarterback in an option offense to begin with, and then not an option offense. So, you know, everybody's journey is different, and what matters is what they do when they get here and what the end result is if they want to go to the NFL. So, you know, I could kind of guess which way, you know, as far as that being, you know, something you can count on. The guy wasn't all that productive here, comes here, or there, comes here. That's good. But I also don't know that you can sit there and count on that. So that's the situation with Damon Clowney. You know, so I think that edge to me would be a little bit more of a question mark than tackle. So the tackles have improved. The edge room, I think, you know, Desmond's gotten better. JT has gotten better. Like I said, Brian Thomas Jr. has taken a step. But then you got behind them, you got young guys, Anthony Addison, Jaquavius Dodd. Both of those guys have had their moments. They're kind of polar opposites as far as, you know, their development journey. You know, Dodd has the physical, you know, 6'5", 240, 50, you know, big guy, long arms. It's just refining him as a player. But then in the high school ranks, Anthony Addison's a hell of a player, but he's like 6'3", 230 right now. So he's got to get bigger and bulk up, and you got to get size on him. So it's two different things. So I wouldn't count on either one. If one can jump in the rotation, great. That's a great sign for the future, but you don't want to count on them. So we'll see what happens with edge. And there's a possibility they don't get an edge. And so that in the portal. So my point here is not necessarily like, oh my God, if they don't sign Bo Atkinson, the season's ruined. I'd love to see him get Bo Atkinson, but competition stiff, and that team up in the Columbus, Ohio may have a lot to say about that. I mean, they're the defending champs. It's Ohio State. But, you know, so you look at it that way. Um, it's not a get Bo or die or get another end or die. The more importantly, I think, because Bo Atkinson would be icing on the cake. More importantly, Umazulu and Gear have to really step up. Those guys need to be what South Carolina thought they were when they got them, or thought they were going to be when they got them. Specifically JT, who struggled with injuries, who was on a in the fast lane, in the commuter lane in Atlanta, speeding along toward a starting role after the finish he had at Syracuse when they got him out of the portal. And then he had a foot injury that just, when you have something like that, it's really hard to play. Tried to play through it, admire that. He's a South Carolina kid, started the first game last year. We kind of knew Dylan Stewart will take that position. Kind of was banged up a little bit last year. So when healthy, what can he do? What can he do? And then with Desmond, it's just continuing to get better and better and better, and stealing snaps with him the last 2 years because he's played. He's played in 12 of the 13 game, or sorry, 24 of the 25 games South Carolina's had since he stepped foot on campus. Just keep, you keep playing him. Just keep getting better and better and better. He hadn't had that moment. Like he didn't. JT joined the sack party out in Norman last year. Desmond did not quite get home, but he's capable. And so those guys to me, along with Brian Thomas Jr. in the run game, that's to me the most important part because you just can't count on going and getting a great edge in the portal. That's kind of the thing there. If they do, then hey, you're nobody's can be more happy about that than me. I love defensive line. That's why I've sat here and talked about it for 10 minutes. The secondary, we made the point the other day with Alex on his Gamecock Smorgasbord segment on the show. You can catch that on your YouTube page, the full interview. That, we all sit around and talk about who's going to replace this corner, that corner. And every year they replace the corners just fine. I mean, people were like screaming and upset that they didn't go sign a portal corner last offseason. Well, it's because they really liked O'Donnell Fortune. Well, he's not any good. Well, he was pretty good. OD had a good year. And before that, it was that Marcellus Dial wasn't any good. Well, he had a good year, a couple of plays notwithstanding, and that's unfortunate because he shut down his side. I mean, that's sometimes when you don't hear much from a corner, that's a good thing because, they're covering their guys. So, but they did go hit the portal for a couple of corners this time around in Miles Norwood and Brandon Cisse. Right now, Cisse's been holding down the fort on the other side at corner with Vakari Swain out. And then you have Judge Collier on the other side. Judge Collier keeps getting better and better and better. He was good last year. Sometimes corners are going to get beat, man. I mean, that just happens. And in this scheme, sometimes it gives up big plays. I'll be honest. That's not a criticism. I said something about it after the bowl, after the 60-yard run. It does give up big plays, but you kind of, with the way it's structured, you don't you just gotta have live with it because it also produces big plays. It's a fun defense. It really is a lot of fun. A lot of guys love playing in it. So I see I take the good with the bad. I think that sometimes on defense you can get so obsessed with not giving up the big play that you're giving up 8-6, 8-6, 4-3, 7-8, and then 20 plays and 11 minutes have come off the clock and you're just frustrated. So and Carolina's that bend but don't break type. First year of Beamer, I thought that defense was a little more bend but don't break just because they lacking in talent and athletic ability. So yeah, the secondary I think is going to be fine. I don't think you can replace Nicky Manware until Jazavian Currents gets here, or Kendall Daniels gets ready to play, or Tamarian Watkins, if he comes to Carolina, develops. Because those are all those types of guys, these big safety types. It's something Torian Gray's always done. But, Peyton Williams looks like the guy there. Maybe David Bucci. You've got DQ Smith, who they love at the other safety, and then Kilgore at nickel. I think this group is good. I think it's deep. I think there's a lot of options. I haven't even mentioned Norwood and Jalewis Solomon are out there. They did lose Emery Floyd, but he was getting passed. And we'll see. I mean, South Carolina's spring game is tomorrow. We'll see if anybody departs from the secondary, because they do have a lot of numbers back there. At Nichols, Abari Sandy, remember him? He's had a good spring as well. That's probably, if you say, what are you most comfortable with on defense? I think probably the secondary, but they didn't have as many questions. When you have Kilgore and Smith back, and you bring in some guys that are proven like more Norwood and Cisse, you don't have as many questions heading into spring. So the position I think has answered the most questions, and I hope I don't look like a fool tonight. And everybody's like, "You were dead wrong about that." Is linebacker. Speed at linebacker wins games. Being slow at linebacker is costly, as we found out around here. Demetrius Knight Jr. brought a lot of speed to the table. And then Bam Martin Scott and Debo Williams, two guys that were part of that infamous first class that ranked 80th in the country, had their best years, I thought. Fred Johnson gave them some snaps back there as well. You look at it, it's a trio. They've all been rotating. I don't know exactly at what position, but Sean Murphy, who came in from Florida State, started his career at Alabama. He one of the top linebackers in the country, coming out of high school, out of the state of Virginia, 6'3", 231, tall, long guy. I've heard he's been doing really well. Justin Onkoronkwo specifically was told big, fast, loves to hit. From Munich, Germany, played at Alabama last year. He's one that wasn't buried on the depth chart. He probably, honestly, would have saw the field a lot this year for the Tide. They did have some guys surprisingly come back. They thought were going to get drafted. So probably not a starter out there, but could be a starter at South Carolina. It's the whole package with him. We've said it before. He was a lacrosse and soccer player growing up in Germany, so great feet. I expect this year as a young player, he's going to make mistakes, but I think he's going to get better and better and better. And the same thing's true, obviously, with Fred Johnson. You guys know Fred J.R. Johnson's kind of one of my favorite players. And he's got to take that next step. And my understanding is he has. Clayton White even said it in the press conference. He's been pleasantly surprised with how these guys have picked it up. And you look across the board at just these three. It's nothing against Jerron Willis or the freshman, Donovan Darden, A.J. Holloway. I've heard they've all progressed nicely as well. Colin Bryant is a walk-on that got a scholarship, play special teams. He actually also played at Alabama as a walk-on. He's from Wando. Shout out Jamie Bradford. But he recovered the fumble at Alabama on the onside kick, if you remember that. That's worth a scholarship, I think. That was a hell of a play. But, so you do have some depth there that's young and improving. But those three in the rotation, they only play two at a time most of the time. That's promising because they're all big, long guys. They all can run. Two of them have been coached up at Alabama under Nick Saban. And Murphy had an injury year last year at Florida State where once he got in, he made some tackles and plays on a very bad football team. But so we'll see. We'll see with that. But that's my spot and my pick for, like wide receiver was on offense, for position that's answered the most questions. Because it scared me to death when you lose Demetrius Knight. And then you look and you kind of look at, just if you didn't look at the speed information on these guys, you just look at the size, you're like, oh man, they're gonna be big, but can they run? Will they be slow? Because you just automatically think big people run slower than small people. At South Carolina, that's not always the case, considering you have a 230-pound receiver that was fastest guy in America, sometimes. But that's not the case. These guys can all run. They're probably going to improve the speed at the position. So if you say, well, they're going to be faster at linebacker, they're much bigger at linebacker, they're much longer at linebacker, but they're young and inexperienced, then that means you just got to coach them up to not make mistakes, mental mistakes, and they could be pretty good. And I think that the physical part of it, they've answered those questions in the spring. The mental part of it's going to come along and along just the more they get out and play. And I'm telling all my spies at the spring game, so to speak, to keep an eye on those guys. Everybody I've talked to has been impressed. Um, I think that we're not going to know if there's a drop off or not, obviously, until the season. But we can safely say that what could happen is there's not just not a drop off, but this group is collectively better and could be a handful for opposing offenses in the SEC. All right, I've yammered enough for the week, for the day, this Good Friday, spring game day. Happy Easter to everyone out there. Hope you enjoy your time with your family. Hope you enjoy the spring game this weekend. Hopefully, baseball does something. A lot of hopefullys there, but spring is for hope, right? It's always a hopeful time of the year. All right, this is JC Shurburtt with coffee. Thanks for listening. I'm out. Holla at you soon.